Just take a few deep breaths. Don't think about what we're doing later, what we did earlier. Let's try to make the most of this time. We're here to work on our minds. I'm going to start with the refuge prayer. It's on the screen. We'll do it in English because that's really all I know. And the refuge prayer we say 3 times. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections may become Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections may become Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Giving and other perfections may become Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And we'll also do the 4 immeasurables. These are 4 immeasurable minds, is what they are. This is where we're trying to get to. May all sentient beings have happiness as the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So, just as a brief introduction about me, like I said, I've been doing this since about 2000. I should be further along, I know, but it is what it is. The prior to that, I was what you would call an Orthodox Jew for about 6 years with the yarmulke and keeping the Sabbath and kosher like that. And prior to that, I was an evangelical Christian for about a dozen years, telling everybody about Jesus. So here we are, things change. And now this happens to be what makes the most sense to me. I have spent some time denigrating other religions. I don't recommend that. I found that all religions, Christianity and Judaism, they're all good for different people, and they all have their truths. And I have good opinions about different religions. I mean, they're all good for anybody. Anyways, getting back to this, what we're going to talk about today is mind and potential. And because I've only got the one class, we're not going to cover the whole thing in the whole mind and its potential. That would normally be several, 4 or 5 weeks in a discovering Buddhism curriculum. If it seems like I'm not very good at speaking, it's because I'm not. The first time I had to introduce my boss in front of, I was the president of the IEEE at FAU, and I was an intern at Bendix Aerospace, and I had to introduce my boss to do a talk on the microwave landing system. I had a couple hundred words printed out in front of me, and I couldn't say the first 2. So I'm doing a little bit better. If I stumble over things, also I'm having, sometimes I forget things, so I might be a little forgetful. You're going to have to cut me some slack. Mind and its potential. Okay, spoiler alert. The potential of the mind is unlimited. these bodies are going to disintegrate and turn to dust and feed the worms, but or maybe get cremated, whatever we want to do. But the mind is going to go on. It's we've had a mind since beginningless time, since infinity. Uh, I can't speak for you. I know for myself, I haven't. I'm kind of happy where I am, but again, could be further along. And the potential is omniscience. The potential is to become a Buddha, which is what it means to become a Buddha, is to become omniscient. Um, there is there is a passage in the Diamond Sutra where the Buddha says, "I know the mind of every sentient being and all the hosts of universes, regardless of any modes of thought, conceptions, or tendencies." That was the Buddha. So he knows every single mind in the whole entire universe that ever existed. And if that's not omniscient, I don't know what is. And that might seem like a high bar for some of us. And okay, when I was going through this course and becoming a registered teacher, the uh, one of the uh, one of the guys that looks at my stuff and says what I'm doing, he said I like to hide behind verses a lot. Yes, I do like to do that, but uh, so this is another thing that the Buddha said about the mind. The triple world is nothing but the mind, and that's from the Buddha in the I can't pronounce this, Avitamsaka Sutra, chapter 20. I can't pronounce it. So everything, everything that we see, everything that we touch, everything is from the mind. There's another school. This is not our school. The mind only school will uses this to say that everything is a projection of the mind. In the middle way, which is the school that that we teach, we don't go quite to that. Basically, if you think about it, everything that you say, everything that you do, everything that you touch, this is actually Pink Floyd said this too. It it's kind of coming. It's coming from the mind. Um, if you're going to say something, it happens in the mind first. If you're going to do something good or bad, it happens in the mind first. Everything is coming from the mind, and like even, I mean, and everything that you see, it gets converted by your eyes into electrochemical signals, and then it ends up in your brain, and your brain somehow transfers it to your mind. I don't know. Nobody knows for sure how that works, but now it's in your mind, and your mind makes a picture of it, so that as you're looking at something, you see it. As you're looking at something, you see it, and there's an image in your mind, but is that really what's there? It's close. It's good enough for us. But you can even see it later in a memory. So that's pretty cool too. Um, so everything is the mind. Everything comes from the mind, all the good and the bad. And again, I'm going to repeat. We're going to think that this is a high bar to get this limitless, this unlimited mind. But we get warned, and again, I'm gonna lean on a scripture by Shantideva, where he says, okay, you're gonna say, oh, that's too much for me. I'll just be happy if I can make it through another day. But Shantideva says, oh, how could I become enlightened? Don't excuse yourself with such despondency. The Buddha, who declares the truth, has truly spoken and proclaimed that if they bring forth strength of perseverance, even bees and flies and gnats and grubs will gain supreme enlightenment hard to find. So that takes away our excuses. This is something that Shanti Davis says. I've read his material a lot. I actually listen more than I read. You'll find that a lot of this material is on audiobooks. Um, for me, I'm lazy. I find it easier to listen to the audio, and it's very helpful. But sometimes you hear something and you want to write it down, but you're driving or something, so that makes it hard. But again, what he's telling us here is that you have no excuse. And it's even better than that, because imagine imagine being fully enlightened like a Buddha, having now we're passing through nirvana before we get that far. That's the ultimate goal, is to become a Buddha. But imagine having no more suffering, knowing everything, and you say, "Oh, but it's so hard. I have to do so much work." Well, okay, it takes 1 trillion years to become a Buddha. Okay, all right. So what are you going to do between now and then, anyways? There you go. So now you're a Buddha, and now you're a Buddha for another 1 trillion years. And the greatest thing about being a Buddha is we have all these people that we care about. Now, on the road, we should learn to care about everybody. I mean, we're supposed to be developing equanimity, care about all things, not just the ones that we love, not just my grandchildren and my wife and all that kind of stuff. Everybody, even the people that don't like us, even the cockroaches and spiders, that those are the those are the things that we need to care about just as much as we care about anybody else. And when we're a Buddha, when we're fully enlightened, that's what happens. And that's how we get there, by the way. And these are all, if you think, again, getting back to it, if you think about it, all these things are coming from the mind. All these things are controlled from the mind, and that's all we're going to have when this body fails us. In the end, like right now, if you're in your 20s, that you might feel strong and invincible, and I can do anything, and nothing's ever going to happen to me. But when we start out as a baby, we're completely helpless. And then we have maybe a few decades where we take care of ourselves, we're independent, we can do whatever we want. But then you get to be my age. As a matter of fact, my mother just moved into an assisted care, and you get to the point where everybody has to start taking care of you now. And it's humbling, but that's where we're all heading. And at the end of the day, our bodies become that we love so much, that we cherish so much, that we take care, that we clean, that we're brushing our teeth, and we're, whatever medical, if we come up with a disease, we're going to do whatever it takes to take care of that disease. We'll spend all our money, but in the end, it's going to fail us. I don't care if you're, Steve Jobs. You're going to get sick, and we're gonna have to deal with it. But if we've trained our minds to be able to handle it, if our minds know how to, nothing can hurt us. Nothing can hurt you if your mind is like if you have control over your mind. I'm not saying I'm there. I have an extremely discursive mind. It jumps around during the meditation. I will have to bring my mind back to the object of meditation over and over and over again. But we work on it. That's why it's called a practice. We do it over and over again. Okay, so let's get into some definitions. This is kind of from the discovering Buddhism. What exactly? How do Buddhists describe the mind? Well, the definition of the mind is clear and knowing. And what does it mean by clear? Well, what does the mind look like? You can't see it. I wouldn't say it's invisible, but it's not something you can see. It's kind of like, well, I don't know what you would. The best description I can have of it, it's not the best description, is like, think of software. What is software in a computer? It's just a set of instructions. It's just a series of zero ones, and you could look at the zeros and ones, but those are just a representation of what's happening. It's like, here's an instruction, move this number to here, add these two numbers together. If these two numbers are greater than this third number, do this, otherwise do that. That's what software is. But is it really something that you could see? No, it runs on the hardware. And right now, as humans, our minds are running on this hardware, but the mind is not the brain. We can see the brain. The mind has the ability to affect the brain. Remember, kind of what we were saying at the beginning. The mind is everything, but the mind and the brain are two different things. Scientists these days, materialist scientists, like to take the opposite approach. As a matter of fact, I'll talk to my son, and he'll say, I mean, he goes along with a lot of this stuff, but a lot of people think that the mind has arisen from the brain. You've got this brain, and now because of that, that's where the mind comes from. It's kind of the opposite. The mind is just the human brain happens to be a very good base for the mind to run on, but you've got the same thing with an ant running along on the ground that you can barely see. The ant also has a brain and a mind, but a very simple one. On the other hand, and it's very similar to us. I mean, you can scare the hell out of it. It's scared. It just wants to find something to eat. It doesn't want to be harmed. It wants to help its friends. It's got some very close similarities. It's a very complex creature, but this clear and knowing. Okay, so the mind is clear. And what about the knowing part? Well, this is what separates us from the computers. I'm in computer science right now, and there's a lot of talk about, oh, well, we're going to have a singularity, and the computers, the AI, they're going to become sentient. And personally, and this is an opinion, I don't think they will. I remember one time, I think it might have been Venerable Tendrin, I asked that question, and she said, well, is it aware? Does it know? Or is it just, or is it just a kind of a copycat? Is it the creator of the AI? Is it following the instructions of the creator? And that now, on the other hand, I've heard something else that what if you're a highly advanced sentient being and you can control your rebirth and you want to go into a machine? Well, you can do that too. So I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that, but the knowing part is the other part of the mind. Okay. Uh, Perception and conception. Perception is bare awareness. When I look at this, I see a color, maroon. That's that's what I see. When I touch this, I feel the material. I feel the wood. This is happening. It's happening in the now. The perception is one thing. That's the immediate thing. That happens with the eye. Also in Buddhism, there's like a seeing mind, there's a hearing, there's hearing, there's seeing, there's tasting. That's all part of the mind. Buddhists don't separate um, in Western civilization, we would think emotions are different, and seeing is not necessarily part of the mind, but in Buddhism, they're all the same thing. And when we do a full course on on the mind, we'll get into some of these various aspects. But that's what perception is. That's what you're actually taking in, and unless something is off, like let's say you there's something wrong with your eyes and you're seeing something red. Well, I used to have a supervisor that was colorblind, and so she couldn't tell the difference between certain colors. And one time she thought we were yanking her chain about the colors of these wires. We were telling her, no, no, these are green and these are blue and these are, and she thought we were pulling one over, trying to play a joke on her, but we were not. Uh, and that's, so that's a false perception if you can't see colors. As a matter of fact, animals like dogs, they're not completely colorblind, but we have three color sensors, and from those we make billions of colors. And dogs only have two, so they're not quite colorblind, but they're more colorblind than us. Butterflies, on the other hand, have five or six. I've seen both. I guess they can see maybe infrared or something else, but we're seeing billions of colors, so I don't know what butterflies actually see. And I think mantis shrimp, my one of my favorite animals, can see more than a dozen colors, has more than a dozen color senses. You should Google it sometime. Mantis shrimp, my new favorite animal. It's hilarious, but I can't even imagine what they see. So we could be off on our perception. Also, you could be on a hallucinogen, and seeing odd things, or you could be hypnotized and told that there's something that you're seeing that's not there, or that you could be hypnotized and told that this is not there when it really is, and your mind would actually make up the materials behind it. So your perceptions can be actually, now we're starting to get into conception. So conception is where you're putting things together, you see something kind of like you have a memory of it, and this is where we run into trouble because we have conceptions, and Venerable Tendron likes to say, and we make stories, and we have all these, oh, somebody's speeding past us, what a moron. And what we really, we don't realize that, there's an emergency and they're on their way to a hospital, or maybe they're missing a plane, who knows, whatever it is. So we make all these stories, or, usually a lot of times it's a family situation. We get into a lot of trouble thinking, I know what they're thinking, and it's awful, and we have no idea. And really, people are mostly focused on themselves. So that's how we cause ourselves a lot of suffering. On the other hand, uh, conception is kind of how we're going to um, get to full enlightenment. We've got to think about these things, and we've got to put two and two together, and we need to analyze. We need, on the one hand, we need to perceive things and try to see things the way they are. On the other hand, we need to analyze and say, well, is this helpful? Is that helpful? Is this a good thing to do? Is this what makes me happy? What's going to lead to happiness? So that's kind of what we're all searching for. We all want to be happy. I mean, that's kind of the one of the reasons I got into the whole thing is very selfish. I wanted to be happy. At the end of the day, the way to do that is to work for the benefit of others. So we're stuck. The way that we're going to get where we want to go is by being kind. Anyways, it's counterintuitive, but the more you think about it and the more you practice it, the more you're going to find out that it's true. This is where we go with ethics and all these other practices that we have in Buddhism. Everything has to do with the mind. All of these prayers that we do, all of these rituals that you see being done, everything is, the purpose of it is to train the mind so that we'll become fully enlightened, so that we'll have liberation from samsara, so that we'll have no more suffering. That's what it's all for. We sometimes we're not when we're praying, we're not necessarily praying to an external being to change us. I mean, they can help us, they can show us the right way, and this this is not this is not really a blind faith religion. This is an experimental religion. What you want to do, and the Buddha was very clear about this. You want to take and you want to try these things and see if it's true. See what works. Practice what it says, and if it doesn't work, well then don't do it. And also, we're not going to be dogmatic about anything. One of our most revered saints, I think Vasubandhu, um, wrote a lot of scripture. Everybody reveres him and quotes him, and but he said a few things about the astronomy that are clearly scientifically incorrect. So we clearly are not required to believe those things. I mean, the sun and the moon are not about the equal distance away, and they don't go around. But maybe I don't know where he came up with these things, but the other stuff that he taught is so important. We don't we don't discard the things that he taught that were important. What's important is we're going to take all of these practices and we're going to do them ourselves. We're going to see if they work for us, see if they work on our minds, see if they make I can tell you for myself, not perfect, but um I have more patience, I have less anger. I am making some progress over these decades, and it's a result of doing these practices. So that's all I can say. The the most important evidence that you're going to get that this is true is if you try it and it works for you. Um, you're going to have questions, you're going to have disagreements about some of the things, but that's okay. That's okay. You can. I was oh, a lot of times I was afraid to ask Venerable Tenderin a question, because I was afraid that the answer, because I was starting to like the Buddhism so much, I was afraid that the answer wouldn't agree with the answer, and it would be a problem, and I wouldn't be able to resolve it. And but I'll give you an example. I mean, one of the things I have a very scientific background. Some of my training was in nuclear engineering before I got into electrical engineering, and I spent a dozen years as a evangelical Christian that believed that God created the earth 6,000 years ago, that kind of stuff. So, so how do you resolve those? How do you resolve those two? Because I see a lot of evidence, by the way, that the Christian Bible is historically correct, and a lot of evidence that there are rocks that are billions of years old. And so I asked Venerable Tenrin, okay, so who is the creator? And I was a little nervous about the answer. And she said, well, we are. The mind is. The mind, and that was one of the things we read at the first. The mind is the creator of everything. Um, we're not going to go into a lesson on karma right now because that's a whole nother discovering Buddhism thing. But we create our own happiness and suffering. If you have, and even the physical stuff is a creation of the mind. I mean, if you go into some of the physics, the Dalai Lama has spoken with a lot of physicists and scientists, and he likes the fact that they say part of the experiment requires the observer. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the double slit experiment, but it's it depends on the observer, depends if there's one or two slits. The electrons and the positrons behave, well, not positrons, the electrons behave differently, or the photons going through the double slit behave differently, depending on whether there's an observer. And so it is our mind that creates these things. I mean, why is there a world where creatures eat each other? This is the world that we created with our minds. And it might seem a little far-fetched, but it actually made quite a bit of sense to me. Um, anyway, I'm going to go off on too many tangents if I don't watch myself. Uh, and I like that answer because it wasn't either one was right. There was a third answer that made sense. So again, getting back to conception, you got to watch out. You got to watch out. Conception is what happens immediately after perception, when the mind starts interpreting what it has become aware of. And it's not always accurate. There's a lot of accuracy to, I mean, we can all agree that most of us, I think, can agree that this is maroon or some red-like color. So we have some agreement. We have some now. Somebody with poor eyesight might that can't see color might say, no, no, that's just gray. But we're not talking about that. Okay. Suffering. This is from the eight verses for transforming the mind. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. And that's from Geshe Langri Tangpa, eight verses for training the mind. So this has got to be this is if this is part of our continual practice, you might want to, when you get a chance, check out the entire eight verses. But this one is dealing most specifically with the subject matter. We feel these until we're Buddhas, these disturbing minds are gonna bubble up. Hatred, attachment, whatever it is, grasping, pleasure is something that we grasp. I mean, you get some pleasure and it's not going to stay. That's not something that sticks around. It's going to be gone and then you're going to be unhappy. Okay, so it's all it's all suffering. Um, as soon as it, but and that's what suffering is. Suffering is anything that disturbs the mind is suffering. As soon as it arises, it's going to arise. If you're human, if you're not a Buddha, things are going to rise. We're going to lose our patience. We're going to get angry. We're going to see something that we want, a mango on the ground that we want to take that is actually my neighbor's. I ended up putting it back on his property. It's just, you got it, I, whatever. It sounds silly, but as soon as anything arises in your mind, I get into a lot of things with the wife. She can always push my buttons. She knows the buttons to push and when to push them and how hard to push them. And it just comes up so quickly. And occasionally I can stop the words from coming out of my mouth. And when I do that, it's actually, I mean, I have the initial suffering of the disturbing emotion arising in my mind, but then I can pat myself on the back because I didn't, what does it say here? Endangering myself and others. I could have hurt her. I could have made her feel, I know how to push her buttons. Okay. I could have escalated, but I didn't. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I haven't arrived yet. So, uh, it's been 43 years. I'll give it another 43 and see what happens. Um, anyways, so there's that. As soon as a disturbing emotion, right? With anybody, when I'm driving, it's so fun. It's so easy to get agitated by other drivers. But who's doing the suffering? You or the other driver. When that happens, it's me. So if I can laugh at myself and say, what good is this doing to me? Now, on the other hand, okay, we think, oh, pleasure, chocolate cake or whatever it is that brings us pleasure. Oh, if you want, maybe I shouldn't say this being recorded, but thankfully I had the presence of mind to only try it once, and that was heroin. I do not recommend that for anybody. If you really want pleasure, go off on that. Um, that is better than anything, but I don't recommend it. Okay. So it will not end well for most people. It ended okay for me because I didn't do it again. If I had, I wouldn't be sitting here now. I wouldn't have three grandchildren, that kind of stuff. This is where attachment, that's the other side of aversion. Attachment is when you're grasping at something. This is the thing that keeps us in samsara. This is the thing. Okay, my mother was asking me just yesterday about death and what do Buddhists believe about death. I said, well, death is just when the body dies, the mind goes on, and yeah, you'll get another. I couldn't get you can't get into too much with somebody that has no knowledge of it, but this is why we come back to suffer some more and more and more is because we're attached to having a body. Once we're free, once we're liberated, we won't have this attachment to a body. And the only reason you would come back is because you're a bodhisattva and you're coming back for the benefit of other beings. You're coming back to help other beings and teach them how to get out of suffering. I heard I mean, one of the things I was listening to, one of the parts of this is when you're listening, if you're in the Discovering Buddhism and not in the course, if you're in the online, they have these they're not tapes anymore, they're audios that you can listen to. And one of the descriptions, I forget who it was, but it was a bucket going up and down in a well. Oh, no, can't remember. Anyway, well, I've got another. Oh, Nagarjuna, Nagarjuna, because I've got another quote from him here. But the bucket going up and down in the well. All right, it's uncontrolled. It's going up and down forever and ever, and it's coming up into states of bliss, states of happiness, going down into the muck and the water, and it's controlled by the rope, and somebody else is controlling it. This is what life is like. It kind of gave me a little bit of intuition. I don't know if many of you are familiar with Milarepa, but Milarepa, when he was wanting to be, he had murdered several dozen people, but he decided to change his life and get on the right track. And what his teacher had him to do. Now, this is a lot of heavy karma, murdering a lot of people, dozens of people, mass murderer. So his teacher said, "Okay, well, I need you to build me this multi-story building." And so he's, if you want to become enlightened, if you want to become liberated. So he did that and he said, "Oh no, I changed my mind, tear it down." And he did this over and over again with Milarepa. And this is the kind of thing that can really, I mean, Milarepa, he was getting like, each time his teacher had a different excuse as to why he needed him to tear it down and build it up again. But this is what samsara is like, up and down and up and down. And that's why, I mean, coming back into this human form, uncontrolled, we're used to it. We want it. We think it's good. It feels good. We don't like not having a body. And until we learn the escape, until we do this practice to the point of we don't have to do it anymore, we're going to suffer. This is the hard part. This is the suffering part. We're going to get attached. We're attached to these bodies, and we're going to be attached to the next ones until we have control of our mind. And this is this is the other thing that I was. This is the other verse. This is one of my favorite verses from Nagarjuna. Satisfaction is the most excellent of all riches. This is what we need: satisfaction. I think Mick Jagger is the one that said, "I can't get none." Um, if I can learn to be satisfied, whether I'm rich or poor, whether I'm healthy or not, then I'm happy. This is this is a clue of where we're heading to, being satisfied and happy in any situation. Um, I I see a lot of people that in the same exact situation that I am that have nothing but complaints about it. And you see, well, let's take, for example, extremely wealthy people. Do you know of any extremely wealthy people that are not happy, that don't have enough, that need more? And you also know the opposite. You know people that have nothing. I mean, I would say one of the best things that happened to me and my family when my kids were in high school, I was out of work for about 3 years. Almost, I mean, we were broke. We were living on ramen noodles, but it was good enough. And it taught the kids a lesson. It was a plus plus. I wasn't a Buddhist back, or was I? I don't remember. When was that? I might have been. Oh, it doesn't matter. But the the point is, things are not going to make you happy. Being comfortable is not going to make you happy. I mean, even physical pain doesn't need to make you unhappy. Even physical pain is in the mind. A lot of people don't realize. I mean, think about what happens when you go to the dentist. What happens? He gives you a shot. What happened to where'd the physical pain go? It's still there, but you don't feel it. You can even do it with hypnosis. With hypnosis, can be used as an anesthetic. It's not very common these days, but it can be done. Um, it's all in the mind. Mind is unlimited. Another thing about the mind that I haven't mentioned while we're getting the definitions is, or am I getting? Yeah, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so that's where it is. Yeah, it's back to satisfaction. If you can talk yourself into being satisfied with whatever situation you're in, what are the money you have, the car you have, the family, the friends you have, you can talk yourself into being, I mean, you're kind of, yeah, you got to kind of talk yourself into it. And then you can be happy in any situation. Um, yeah, I said that about the physical pain and that kind of stuff. I mean, okay, here's another Shantideva quote. To cover the earth with sheets of leather, where could such amounts of skin be found? But with the leather soles of just my shoes, it is as though I have covered the entire earth. And that's a Shantideva thing. What's he saying there? What he's saying there is, I can't stop this person from being rude to me. I can't, everything external is external. If I can just train my mind, I won't suffer. If I can get my mind trained to the point where I'm satisfied under any circumstance, there's no suffering. So that's where the suffering comes from, not having a trained mind. Um, I think there was a king that had, this might be like a legend, a king that had talked about covering the whole kingdom, so people wouldn't walk on thorns. But then the idea was just put shoes on. That's all you need is shoes on your own feet. All you need, if you want to not suffer, if you want to be happy, is to have a trained mind. And I'm saying all you need, like, yeah, let's do that right. Yeah, give it to me now. I want patience, but I want it now. Okay. Um, what are the other kinds of things that can cause suffering? Misleading friends. Um, this is a hard one because we have our friends and we have our peer pressure and we can get pulled off into things. Uh, but this is what happens. Everybody wants to give advice. Everybody thinks they know. I don't think I know. A lot of the stuff I mean, the stuff that I'm saying, I'm learning from people that know a lot. Everything I'm telling you is not something that I made up. Maybe I will one day. I don't know. When I'm a that's the other thing. When you become a Buddha, you can read people's minds. You know exactly what they need to hear. When we give advice, it's not even if we kind of know what we're talking about, it can still be the wrong advice. You got to be. I don't give any. I try not to give it. Well, here I am giving advice. But I've been kind of. We kind of. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm getting off. It's misleading. You all know of. This is how people have misleading friends. They get pulled off. They tell you to jump off a bridge, you jump off a bridge. Father told me if your friends tell you to jump off a bridge, would you do it? Yeah. Maybe if you keep asking me that, I don't know. But
Oh, the other question.
yeah, you can be in. You have to start questioning things. Even the stuff that you're learning here, you want to question everything, but not too much, or you won't accomplish anything. But questioning things is important. You go back and forth, you things in mind, what works, what doesn't work, and also look at the results. I mean, take advice from people. I would recommend that you take your advice from people that are happy and people that are satisfied rather than, if somebody's giving you advice that doesn't have what you want, isn't where you want to be, they're going to have something to offer. Everybody has something to offer, but just filter it. You got to filter some of these things and be careful. Um, if uh, if for example, if you're an alcoholic, you don't go with your friends to a bar. You don't do that. One of the one of the when you want to become what's it called, take refuge in Buddhism, there's 5 vows that you want to take. One of them is the abstaining from alcohol, which not a lot of people, not everybody takes. But the reason for the abstaining from alcohol is not so much that there's anything intrinsically wrong with the alcohol or getting a nice buzz, but it's what happens after you do that. It's you can I've done really stupid things on alcohol. I can attest to that. So it's you break all the other five or the other four when you're on the alcohol. So if you can take that vow, it's a good vow to have. Even last night, my mom was trying to get me to taste her appletini, and I said no. I think since I've taken the vow, I think I've broken it twice. Once when my mother was real insistent on me taking a sip of something, and another time at my daughter's wedding. So I'll let myself off on that one. But the the friends thing, you got to be careful with that. I would say I would say that some of the friends that you've got here, you're safer with, and taking advice and talking to the friends here. I actually I do actually talk to my son a lot, because sometimes I bounce things off of him, even though he's not a Buddhist. He has a tremendous amount of he studies this kind of stuff a lot. So he sometimes has some pretty good answers because I have some interesting family situations that uh, I sometimes need to bounce things off of him. But there's that. Yeah, so be careful with your friends, be careful who you take advice from. And at the end of the day, even getting back to the original thing, you need to practice with these things and you need to see if they work for you and if they make improvements in your own life. Karma is another thing that causes suffering. And karma is a difficult one because karma is considered one of the most obscure, the most hidden things because that you have to be a Buddha to fully understand karma. But you might be saying to yourself, why did this happen to me? I didn't do anything to deserve this. Well, 2 lifetimes ago, you may have done something that this is exactly what happens to the karma. Karma's a, if you look at physics, it's a very physics kind of thing. If you've ever played pocket billiards, if you hit the ball exactly right, the ball goes in the pocket. If you hit it wrong, the ball doesn't go in the pocket. It's just action and reaction. Mr. Newton, that's what Mr. Newton said. For every action, there's an opposite reaction. Now, he said opposite and equal. In karma, it's not necessarily equal. Sometimes there's a butterfly effect. Karma can grow. Something simple as killing a bug can grow into a much bigger karma. So that's why we don't want to kill anything, and we want to purify the karma. But again, I don't want to get off onto a karma discussion right now, because that's a whole nother course in itself. The reason it's brought up here, because that's one of the sources of suffering, is stuff we've done in the past. But getting back to the mind and karma, this is what we're doing with our mind. Now, let's say you've got your mind, let's say you've been working on your mind and your mind is trained so that things can't hurt you. I remember, I don't know, it was a famous nun. It was one of the audiobooks that I was reading. She had somebody in the car with her on a train in India or something, and it was such a lovely train ride. But this roommate that she had with her was complaining about this and complaining about that, complaining about the other thing. And finally, one morning, the sun was coming up. It was sunrise and they were on the train, and it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. And she said, "Isn't that the most beautiful thing you've ever seen?" And the other woman said, "But the glass is so scratchy." So what that is that's karma. Karma is one of the aspects of karma is a habit. It's something that we're doing over and over again. And if we're in the habit of complaining about things and the habit of being unsatisfied and ungrateful, that's the habit that we're going to have. And unfortunately, when when we die, and we will die, that's not the kind of mind we want to have when we're dying, because that's the kind of mind that could result in a lower birth, like as an animal or something. What we want to have, what the habit that we want to have in our mind at the time of death is, oh, here comes another adventure. I hope that in my new life, I'm going to be able to make a lot more progress on this path, a lot more than I did this time. And that's how that's how we make progress. That's how we become a Buddha. Now, don't get discouraged because you've got infinity to work this out, and you're doing like just sitting here today. We're creating a lot of good karma, and this good karma is going to come back eventually. So this good karma from today is going to come back eventually, and we're going to keep making progress on the path. Matter of fact, there's elsewhere in the Diamond Sutra where the Buddha says he's going to stick around and he has resolved to lead all of us to righteousness. So he's going to stick around and he's going to be there when we need him to help us on the path to enlightenment. We need to take that as an example and do it for everybody else, and that's kind of how we'll get there. Okay, what are the things? Mistaken ideas such as believing impermanent things are a source of happiness also causes suffering. Um, Material things, I'll say it again, are not the source of happiness. The bank account, the fancy car, there's nothing wrong with pleasure. The goal is to have pleasure and good things without the clinging or attachment to them, and have the pain and the suffering and the bad things without the aversion or the mind that comes up that's averse to them. I mean, one of the things I'm always looking forward to when I get a new car is my first ding. I come out to my car, I see the first, I know somebody, some kid swung his door open and put a little ding in my car. There you go. Okay. Now I don't have to worry about it anymore. Um, and no matter what you do, stuff is not going to we all want to make things permanent. I see a advertisement as I'm riding on the highway, for diamonds, they last forever. Here's what a billion years looks like.
Yeah.
Nothing, nothing, nothing lasts forever. Not not diamonds, not even, I mean, helium doesn't have a half-life, but everything has in it the impermanence. I mean, what in helium causes it to go away? The fact that it has gravity, it's going to pull a whole bunch of more helium in. Eventually, it's going to fuse and become carbon or something. It's not going to be helium anymore. That's nothing stays the same. It's just you can't be attached to anything. If you are, that's going to be a source of suffering. What's the biggest cause of suffering? And the cause of attachment and aversion? Ignorance. This is where we see things, and this is a whole nother subject I'm not going to get into. This is the subject of ignorance and emptiness, but not seeing things as they really are. This is an even longer course with even tougher questions and answers, but we see things as permanent. We see things as lasting, and that's that we look at things, and that's just not the way they are. This is, I'm looking at this. It seems solid. I can pick it up. It's got some weight to it. One of the things when I was a child, I used to like to read encyclopedias. I was reading, it said if you could put an atom under a magnifying glass so it was the size of this room, the nucleus of that atom would be a speck of dust in the middle of that room. But it's even more than that. If you could magnify, and it didn't say this in the encyclopedia, but I know it now. If you could magnify that nucleus to the size of this room, the whole thing would be empty. It's just a bunch of swirling strings. There's nothing there. Everything we're looking at is the only reason my hand doesn't go through this book is because there's a cloud of electrons on the surface of my skin and on the surface. There's an electronic force keeping my hand. If my hand was made of neutrons, it would go right through. It's just because we're just mostly space. We're mostly space. Things aren't what they appear, and things don't last. And there's a whole bunch of other things. There's a whole bunch of other ways to describe ignorance, but it's just not seeing things the way they are. I don't recommend, if you're trying to give somebody advice, to tell them that they're ignorant. Okay. But for us to understand this terminology, that's the terminology: ignorance, emptiness. The emptiness and ignorance are special to Buddhism. This is something that doesn't come up in Christianity. This is actually something that if it came up, then you would say, well, that would make God impermanent. That would mean that God has to die someday. And yeah, that's kind of what we believe. As Buddhists, whether it's true or not, I think it's true, but that's what we believe. Um, another thing, continuity of consciousness. This is another important thing. One of the things we were talking about at the beginning is that since beginningless time, since infinity, this is when our mind comes back. What is the? Well, I'm just going to say it. This moment of mind, there's a few causes for it, but the primary cause is the previous moment of mind. And the primary cause for that moment of mind was the previous cause. And on back to infinity. Well, where did it start? It didn't. Infinity. Um, the other things that affect the mind is everything that you're taking in, all that you touch and you feel and you see and you hear and you smell. Those kind of things have effects on the mind, things that you analyze, but the primary reason for the current moment of mind is the previous. They say there's 64 or 65 moments of mind in a finger snap, and each one of those moments of mind, we're making either positive or negative karma. Uh, Now, what's happening between those moments of mind? I think I could be wrong. Maybe there's an infinite, maybe it's just a continuum. I've also heard that there's a continuum mind, but it's easier to think of that way, that there's moments of mind. Uh, and they go back to the beginning. By the way, that's another thing you can do with hypnosis that they don't quite understand when they do it. With hypnosis, you can bring people back. Like, let's say you're in the FBI and you have a subject, and he was, you want to bring him back in time to something that he doesn't remember. Well, you can do that, and psychiatrists can do that too. They can bring somebody back to something that they don't remember. And what hypnotists have done have brought people back further and further, and in some cases, even to their past life. And they don't understand what that means, whether it's true. There's not everybody that does. I haven't done hypnosis in high school, like, so I can't speak that much on it, and I'm not going to go that much into it. But that was something that I remember, that you could, that there are instances of bringing people back into previous lives. And this is also how we kind of evidence that we this is also evidence that we do have a rebirth. That, not like my father believed, when you're dead, you're dead. That's what he believed. That's what a lot of people in the West believe today. We're just materialists. You were born, your mind was created by your brain, and then when you're dead, you're dead. Okay. But as Buddhists, the way we understand it is, well, if this moment of mind is from the previous moment of mind, then it has to come from a previous life. In other words, when you were conceived, the previous moment of mind was a previous life. And that's what we believe. And there's plenty of evidence for that. We're not going to get, there's another subject we're not going to get into. We don't have time to get into in depth here of the rebirth, but there are tremendous works. There's a lot in the East, because this is something that they all believe. In the West, it's not believed very much. Religious Orthodox Jewish people believe it, by the way, in reincarnation. Uh, in the West, it's not believed so much. But even in the West, there's tremendous evidence where people have done story. You could find books. I could find stuff. If you're interested, I could find you the texts where it goes through people that uh, don't believe in it at all, but there's so much evidence. And by the way, I use the word evidence. People talk about being able to prove something. I don't think you can really prove anything to anybody except for yourself. And all you can do is keep building up evidence until you believe something, because you have enough evidence to believe it. And then you might find contradictory evidence that says, oh, well, no, I don't believe that anymore. Now I believe this. And that's fine too. But that's what you'll find with rebirth, is that there's a tremendous amount of evidence that it's true, and that we are beginningless and endless minds. So this is what we have. Also with well, here, I'll just tell you an interesting story. I like to talk about my son. When he was about when he was about 3 or 4, maybe 5, he was in the garage with my mother, and there was a big cockroach. And my mother was going to spray the cockroach with spray. And my son, he's only 4 years old. He says, "Oh, don't do that. He's not hurting anybody." Now, the reason I bring that up is because you don't learn that. That's not something you learn. That's a habit that you've acquired from a previous life. So it's just, and also you see this, you see the opposite in other, you see people that come out with these habits. As a matter of fact, if you have three children, they're three completely different children. Why is that? They're from the same parents. It's because they have habits from previous lives. All right, here's the final thing I'm going to talk about with mind, and that is the levels of consciousness. The level of consciousness that we're all doing, that we all have now, where we're hearing and we're seeing, this is what you would call the gross level of consciousness. But there's much more subtle levels of consciousness too that go down, and that's where you get to the Buddha level. We all have Buddha potential. That's that's why we can all become Buddhas, because we all have the potential, we all have the mind in us to become Buddhas. Why aren't we Buddhas now? Because we have all these obscurations, we have all this ignorance, we have this aversion, we have this attachment, we have all these things that we want. I think I'm a self. I think I have to watch out for myself and look out for number one. And this is my phone, and you better not take it, and all that stuff. And all that stuff causes suffering. And that's, I mean, that's what's keeping me from being a Buddha. That I have this self and this selfishness. Once we get rid of ourself, once we realize that there's no inherently existent self, let's not open that can of worms today. But once we realize that, that's when we are liberated and no longer suffer. Not necessarily a Buddha yet, but that's when we're liberated and no longer suffer, because now all we care about is, there is no self. So there is no, this is mine, that's yours. There's no dualistic. And that's the subtlest level. We kind of glimpse that when we die, but we don't recognize it. And that's one of the things that we'll do in the death and impermanence discovering Buddhism is you go through the stages, and when you start to learn to recognize the stages, maybe you can do that while you're dying, and that's one of the places that you can become enlightened. Um, as homework, what I'm going to give you all to, and I'm going to open the floor for some questions, and if there are no questions, I can keep going on the mind, because this can go on. I mean, this is one of my favorite things. Yes.
Oh, Jack, you were saying something about being happy. One of your wise friends said that there's sometimes the wanting is more pleasurable than the having.
My mother has said that.
It was also said by your good friend, Mr. Spock.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true though. I'm gonna because wanting is isn't that kind of attachment, like you're wanting something?
Yeah, and then you finally get your Mercedes Benz, and it's not as nice as you thought it would be.
Yeah.
Like I guess the ambition of getting it was more enjoyable than achieving it.
There could be pleasure in like
I look at movies, right? The moment the conflict ends, the movie ends. Right?
Yeah.
You enjoy the journey, but yeah.
Yeah, when my mother used to go on vacations, I mean, that's what she would say. She would say the anticipation of going on the vacation is just as good or better than the actual vacation itself.
There you go.
But I don't know. I'd have to ask. This is where because I'm a new teacher, I really don't know how to answer that.
Just have fun.
Yeah.
So I like the example. I never thought of that analogy, the mind versus the brain, like the software versus the hardware aspect. Could you elaborate on that a bit more? Do you use that for your own meditation sometimes when you're trying to like analyze?
Well, yeah, it's like it's not just the software and the hardware, but it's also the I/O, like the keyboard and the mouse and the monitor, or like this is and the speaker is the voice, and and the computer chips are the brain, but the keyboard is the input, but the software, how much does the software weigh that goes into that? It doesn't weigh anything. It could be 1,000 terabytes of software. It doesn't weigh a microgram.
You said like there's like ones and zeros, but those are like not the software itself, but some instructions. Like, so I guess that's kind of like how you can maybe tell what the mind is thinking by looking at the brain, but it's not necessarily implying the brain produced it.
Yeah, and I don't know how the brain compares to silicon, but in silicon, it's just a sequence of instructions that are very much like telling a story in a book that you're reading. Like like that's what software's like. It's like a book that you're reading. It's got this story, and everything has to fit. And the bugs, there's bugs in the story, and the bugs in the story are the stuff that doesn't, well, how could that happen? That couldn't possibly, that's where the bugs come in, where if this or this, then this, but what about this? You didn't take in this consideration. But yeah, that's really all software is a sequence of instructions, one after another, just like the mind. A photon is the same way. I mean, a photon is, if you think of it as a particle, it could be a particle or a wave, but a photon is an electric field moving this way. And then at a perpendicular, it creates a magnetic field, and the electric field goes away, and there's a magnetic field going this way. Because it's a moving magnetic field, it creates an electric field going this way. So it's one moment of the photon creates the next one, electric, magnetic, electric, magnetic, electric, magnetic, and it keeps going forever unless it hits an electron. If it hits an electron, it might knock the electron out of the thing, and now instead of being blue, now it's red because it gave some of that energy to the electron, and now it's changed into a different color. But it's still the same photon, sort of. And it's changing from moment to moment. It's kind of like that too. That's what the mind is like.
So,
Henry said the vacation is based on expectations. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Jack, can I
Yeah.
ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for the teaching. It's wonderful. I've never quite understood the teaching that you mentioned on how each moment of mind flows from the previous moment of mind. You know what I mean? If I'm understanding it correctly, and it goes back in a beginningless stream of mind, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
So
like
I guess on a very
it's
basic
very,
level, I don't understand. That's not one's experience, right? One's experience is that your mind state changes abruptly from one moment to the next, depending on what's happening. And maybe on some subtle level, I just don't understand I don't understand the teaching of one moment of mind flowing from the previous one.
okay. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can. Um, it's not that something external cannot affect the mind or change the direction, but it's that it, this this mind didn't come from nowhere. It didn't come from nothing. Um, there are several factors that create this moment of mind, and the primary one is the previous moment of mind. The same thing with the cell phone. Um, this cell phone is a whirring mass of particles that we can't see because our eyes aren't that microscopic, but it looks the same from one moment to the next. But the reason it's a phone now is because it was a phone a minute ago. Now, in 20 years, it might just be, it might have ended up in an incinerator or a landfill. It might not function as a phone anymore. What else? What else can I think of? Um, just about anything is dependent upon the previous, anything physical is dependent upon the previous moment of that physical thing. Uh, and it's the same thing with the mind. I mean, that's just a Buddhist, it's a Buddhist belief. A materialist might say that the first moment of mind was created by the brain. But in Buddhism, we say no, it was created, not created at all, but it was it the primary cause for it was a previous moment of mind, and the other things that abruptly change it are either external things or karma. Like you say, something abruptly happens, like somebody says something rude to you, and anger arises very quickly. Um, Now, maybe you can handle it or maybe not, but it's it's affecting the moment of mind that you're having right now. And then that is causing the next one and the next one and the next one. I don't know if I answered it properly. I could send an email to Tendrin if that's not a good enough answer.
No, that
I don't
helps.
know.
Thank you. It just seems maybe like karma has a lot to do with that teaching. I'm not sure, but thank you.
Well, yeah, what karma of course has a lot, because everything that we do is a function of, everything that happens is a function of karma. Not that we can't change things, not that we can't make a decision and say, well, I'm not going to react to that. Yeah, but karma is, like, let's say your mind is trained. Let's say you've got a trained mind, then you're going to be able to avert that disturbing mind that's arising, and maybe control the words coming out of your mouth and not create new bad karma. But you've, how can I say it? What happens that you've dissolved that karma? But yeah, karma is very integral with the mind.
Great, great.
Bob?
Thank you. Thank you.
Go
Jack,
ahead, Bob.
can I ask you a question? How would you tie this into the concept of being in the now and awareness?
Being in the now and awareness, well, that being in the now and awareness, that's the only time that we have. There's nothing we can do about the past. And until we're a Buddha, there's not much we can do about the future other than practice and try to do our best. But the now, Eckhart Tolle wrote a book called something about the now.
Power of
I
now.
read it or listened to, yeah. I I read it or listened to it a couple of times. He took a lot of Buddhist thought and put it into that book. He might be a Buddhist himself, I don't know. But yeah, the now is the only thing that we actually have. The problem with it is it's gone so quickly. I mean, it's yeah, here it is, it's gone. Here it is, it's gone. But it's important to focus on the now, because people live in the, you don't want to be living in the past where, oh, the good old days, things were so much better. Oh, I wish, I just wish that, and I wish this, or you're always just living in the future. Oh, I mean, there's nothing wrong with planning, but revolving your whole life around, I mean, there's people that work themselves to death. It's their whole life is their work, and then they die on the phone. It's oh, I had one of my good friends was he died quite a few years ago. I knew him very well, but he was a wheeler and a deal. He was on his deathbed in the hospital, and there were, he had lost all his weight because he was dying of cancer, and he was still wheeling and dealing with everybody around his table, but his lifestyle, I don't know if he was happy. He was constantly focused on the future and becoming a success, and not being satisfied and happy with what he had now. I don't know if that answers your question or if you were asking a different question.
No, that's great. By the way, I thought your talk was great. Are you going to let us know when your next discussion is going to be?
That Yeah, that's not going to be up to me.
Yeah, but to give background a bit on like why you like embarked on this journey and
Oh,
I guess when we could potentially.
okay. All right.
5 minutes, so.
I'll give you 5 minutes of 5 minutes of Jack. Okay, so I was raised Jewish. I did my bar mitzvah in Hebrew, and I meddled a little bit in high school with Buddhism, most Zen Buddhism, but didn't get very far with it. I went to university.
And then the like why you decided to like learn.
Oh,
become
I
a
am.
teacher. Oh, you're getting there. Okay, sorry.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You're-
Yeah, I have, and yeah, I'll get to it quick. So, oh, why, okay, let me fast forward just a little because we only got like 5 minutes. Okay, so about 20 years ago, I was practicing Aikido, and I have a tremendous amount of curiosity. I've heard there's two reasons people practice Buddhism seriously. I know one of them is fear. You don't want to go to the lower realms. What's the other one, Anthony?
Trust. Teachings.
Trust in the teachings, trust in the teachings.
And a wise fear of suffering and trust in the teaching.
Okay,
So
yeah.
Two causes for refuge. I don't know.
Two causes for refuge.
Yeah.
Might have been a third. I mean, I had kind of, I guess you could say it might have been a fallen along the lines of trust in the teachings. But so I was doing this Aikido class, and somebody, this was back in around 2000. Somebody gave me a book called The Tibetan Art of Living and Dying, and that is kind of a lam rim. It covers the entire gamut of Buddhism from beginning to end. And I read that. And then immediately after reading that, I read, what's it called? The Art of Happiness by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I found it a little bit confusing because I just wanted to become liberated and free from suffering. And he was talking all about this compassion stuff. I did not see the connection at that time, but I kept going, and I started looking for a place like this. At the time, the center did not have a website, so but I found the center. It wasn't actually at this location; it was at a different location. I found the center. They didn't have a website. I wasn't a web designer, but I was able to put together a website and get us online. And so that was help. So that was then, and this is now. So I've been doing it. I did it for a few years. I had gotten laid off, and I was kind of surprised that I couldn't find work really fast. But so I ended up doing my Buddhism in other states, Chicago and New Jersey and Virginia for a little while. I was not a very good Buddhist at the time, but I was trying to keep it up. My wife is a very devout Christian of the sort that I'm going to burn in hell forever. So that's an interesting relationship. But I used to believe the same way, that if you weren't a Christian, you could burn in hell forever. You got to give them a break when they're being evangelical, because they're just worried about your eternal salvation. So be nice. If they come on a little strong. So but when I finally I finally managed to get back to Florida. See, that this is where I think the Bodhisattvas and the Buddha's help. They got me back here. I started coming back to the center, and I started to get more and more serious about it. I found Venerable Tendrin was extremely helpful, very down to earth. I had a very good connection. I was able to learn from Venerable Tendrin a lot of what I know. I listen to a lot of audios. I read some books when I can, but I mostly listen to audios. And I got concerned because after about what 6 or 7 years, Venerable Tendrin had was told by Lama Zopa that she needed to go on retreat, and I started to get concerned that we weren't going to have a teacher. And then she also made indications that she wasn't going to be here forever, that there is such a thing as impermanence. So I knew we were getting visiting teachers and that kind of stuff, but I know that it's expensive supporting a visiting teacher. As a teacher that lives in the area, I don't have to be paid. As a matter of fact, I can support the center, not just and also one of the things I know about being a teacher is that is the best way to accumulate good karma. Sorry, guys, but I'm still looking out for myself. Accumulating all that good karma. I know the center needs a teacher, and so that is one of the reasons I got on. You have to do it with the FPMT. You have to do it. What's it called? What's the word? You have to. They have a very specific sequence that you have to go through to become certified teacher for the FPMT. They don't want you going off. As a matter of fact, one of the questions I asked them after I got my certification is, what would it take for me to be allowed to teach the Diamond Sutra? And they said, don't do that. You're not qualified. So I won't be doing that. But I love the Diamond Sutra. So in my other teachings, you'll be hearing some quotes from, and also the Bodhicitta. But yeah, so it took a while. I got certified, and now what I'll do is whenever we don't have a visiting teacher, I'll try to be available for teaching the classes here. And what we're going to attempt to do is get a regular series of the Discovering Buddhism from beginning to end, and do that over and over again. It kind of covers everything. So the other benefit of my being a teacher for myself is that I'll get a chance to learn the material. Finally. Any other questions? Okay, if not, we'll do the dedication. And we'll start on page 235 in the book. I'm going to do the first 5 verses. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Just brave Ranjan Shri and Sumatra realize things as they are. I too dedicate all these merits in best way that I may follow the perfect example. I dedicate whatever roots of virtue with the dedication praised as best by the victorious one thus gone 3 times, so I might perform good works. I dedicate whatever virtues I've ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of perfect pure Losandrapa to shine forever. And then on 244, for his holiness. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. Powerful Genrezi, Tenzin Piazza, please remain until samsara ends. And then back on 234 for the swift return of Lama Zopa. Fearless teacher, assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Sarvakas, Pratibhukas, victorious Lozang, father and sons, along with lineage masters, all objects of refuge of infinite lands, and please bestow virtue and goodness, accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading these precious and clear teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Comparable venerable Guru, to you I make request. Striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and mother living beings who suddenly departed to peace, what a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth, the blessings of the ocean of three jewels and the great waves of Bodhicitta, the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. And on page 245, praise of Lama Sankapa. We're gonna do this 3 times in English. 245. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion, Manjushri, master of stainless wisdom, Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire house of Mara, Tsongkhapa, Pranjula, the sage of the land of snows, Philos and drop at your feet and make request. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion, Manjushri, master of stainless wisdom, Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire house of Maras, Tsongkhapa, crown jeweler, the sage of the land of snows, Philos and drop at your feet I make request. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion, Manjushri, master of stainless wisdom, Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire house of Maras, Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the crown, Philos and drop at your feet I make requests.
And for quick announcements, everyone, so starting next week, Venerable Calden will be teaching. He'll be remote for now. He'll be coming to South Florida in July, mid-July, and he'll be here till August. But for now, he's doing a few events. So we'll meet here on Sundays, continue to meet here on Sundays. He'll be joining virtually, and he'll have some questions for us to discuss as a group as well. So it'll be nice, fun, interactive. And so that'll be on Sundays. Then we have virtual teachings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then on Mondays and Wednesday mornings, he'll be doing 30-minute meditations. So all of this will be in the newsletter with more details and registration links, but I just wanted to give you that preview.
You could, I think I've got the webpage open.
The meditations will be at 7:30.
Yeah, there.
Yeah, so he'll be
It's
doing,
got upcoming and it's got calendar.
and Sundays will be at the same time, same schedule with a group meditation and the course followed after. So that's all we have there. And then Steve has some desserts and treats in the kitchen if you'd like to have some. What do you have, Steve?
I have some Italian desserts. And Forte di Siena.
Forte di Siena.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
Good.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.